My mother forced me out to focus on her new household, then requested funds for my siblings' education after learning about my achievements. For context, my mom had me when she was 20, and my birth father was absent from the start. She explained that he never desired kids, and since they'd only been together briefly when she got pregnant, she gave him the chance to walk away, which he took. Due to the resentment from their split, she decided against seeking child support, and he avoided any contact too. It suited both of them to cut ties completely. She was lucky to receive constant backing from my grandparents, helping her complete her education and find a job. She saw a few guys during my early years, and when I was around 8, she started seeing Harry, someone from her workplace. They were together for more than 3 years before tying the knot. Harry and I weren't particularly bonded, but we managed to coexist peacefully in the home. 4 years into their marriage, when my mom got pregnant, the whole family was thrilled. That included me. Looking back, I might have anticipated the outcome, but I was too focused on believing my mother would always stand by me. I trusted she wouldn't abandon me after all the hardships she'd faced raising me alone. Clearly, after marrying Harry, she grew more distant from me, and our relationship faded, but I assumed it was temporary and would get better. Throughout her pregnancy, I tried to be supportive, yet she seemed more annoyed whenever I was around. To not bother her, I chose to stay out of sight, but apparently, that wasn't sufficient. 6 months after the twins arrived, she and Harry had a serious talk with me. They said they couldn't afford to have me in the house anymore with 2 babies to care for. Since I was only 16 and still a minor, they couldn't legally evict me without facing issues. By stressing the strain of supporting a large family on their limited earnings, they tried to convince me to go. Honestly, I didn't see it as a struggle to sustain 2 adults, 1 teen, and 2 infants on the incomes of 2 software developers, as we'd been fine until then. It was obvious they just wanted me out. I truly didn't want to depart, so even then, I suggested solutions to prevent it. If finances were the issue, I proposed getting a job, but my mother insisted she wanted to reserve funds and efforts for the kids who merited it more. She emphasized that they merited to remain with them more than I did, not that they required it more. That was enough to convince me I needed to go, as it was clear I wasn't wanted. After I left, they hadn't even suggested a place for me to stay. They just guided me in that direction, knowing I'd have enough self-respect to recognize I was unwelcome. Their plan worked. Since they hadn't formally kicked me out, it wasn't officially an eviction, but I'd still view it that way. I felt trapped into leaving after they'd put me in that position. That day, I headed directly to my grandparents' place. They were angry about my mother's actions, but didn't sever ties with her because they wanted to support the twins. At 16, I got a part-time job since I couldn't depend on my aging grandparents for money anymore. I'd occasionally see my mom and Harry when they visited my grandparents with the kids, but they rarely asked about me. When they did interact, it was very polite, as if they didn't long for me at all. They actually seemed content without me there. It hurt to see my mother less stressed, but I knew I couldn't change it. I stayed with my grandparents until college time. Even then, my mom wasn't involved, so I relied on friends to help me move into my dorm, as my grandparents were too old and unwell. My mom and Harry refused, wanting to save for the twins' future, so I took out student loans with a relative co-signing. Luckily, one of my uncles stepped in, as long as I promised he'd never cover any payments. I worked through college to stay on top of repayments and build some savings. Once in college, my mom and I barely communicated, and only my grandparents attended my graduation. My mother didn't even send congratulations. After college, I got a job and moved out to avoid burdening my elderly grandparents. In the early years, my income was modest, but I managed rent, bills, food, and began repaying debt while saving for later. In fact, I'd call that truly scraping by. Thankfully, things improved over time. It was gradual, but I climbed the ladder in my company. Given the minimal help I received, I'm proud of my progress and now enjoy a stable situation. Surprisingly, after years of no contact, my mother learned I was doing well. At almost 33, I'm in a high-level management position at the firm where I started. 4 months ago, I earned a major promotion, but I kept it quiet, sharing with only a few people. I did tell my uncle to thank him for co-signing my loan when I struggled with college costs. From what I gather, he recently saw my mom and Harry at a family event and suggested she reach out to congratulate me on my progress. Though I'm sure he had good intentions, it backfired since she didn't contact me for well wishes. Ultimately, My mother heard about it and showed up at my home with Harry recently, demanding a conversation. Note that I hadn't spoken to her since college began. After graduation, I blocked her everywhere and removed her from my life, seeing no point in expecting her to reconsider. She didn't seem affected, and frankly, I doubt she noticed. I only kept in touch with my grandparents, who knew I hated talking about my mother and avoided the topic. I wasn't close with my uncle either, so I didn't know my mom and Harry had faced money problems for years. I only learned when they appeared at my door and explained their dire situation. It was optimistic, but I let them in hoping they'd apologize. They started by saying they'd heard from my uncle about my promotion and how I was among the youngest in such a key role at my company, instead of praising my success. It appeared they were shocked I'd hidden it from them. Funnily, I was surprised they thought I'd share anything with them, let alone good news. They also expressed regret that I'd cut them off, arguing it was just because they'd put their kids first over me. They claimed I should have been mature enough as a teen to understand their shifted focus and not hold a grudge. They suggested I should have backed their choices instead of moving to my grandparents. I can't fathom why they expected me to approve of them pushing me out. That's how they kicked off our reunion after so long, trying to make me feel like the villain for resenting being ousted so they could focus on their kids. Without letting me share my view, they dove into how hard the last few years were for them. They explained starting their own business, but sadly it failed, leading to debts. Now they were trying to recover, and with the twins nearing college, they urgently needed cash. That's when I realized their motive. They wanted money. They didn't hesitate, even framing it as letting me compensate by funding my siblings' education, while initially upset I hadn't reached out despite succeeding. I was stunned by their effort to portray it as doing me a favor by allowing me to cover college for two kids I barely know. I immediately said no and called it rude for them to assume they could pressure me. I got angry and recalled how they made me work through college and fund my own degree. Back then, they declined to help because they wanted to save for their true children, whom they felt deserved it more. I told them they had no claim on me now, especially not money, since I'd respected their choice to prioritize the twins and left them be. They no longer had any right to expect contact from me. I pointed out that since they'd wanted to hoard resources for the deserving kids, they could now use those savings for the twins' tuition instead of trying to manipulate me. I had nothing more to add, so I told them to leave. I was foolish to let them in, thinking they might regret how they'd treated me. When I insisted they go, they got mad and tried shifting blame. They claimed I wasn't blameless here. Their defense, they said I was too eager, too intrusive, and often moody when we lived together. I couldn't believe that was a real complaint, as I was just a teen trying to stay connected as they pulled away. Then they dared say I was no different from them for refusing. They accused me of ignoring all the years my mother raised me solo. They called this my chance to repay her as a daughter, but instead I was being selfish and thankless. It seemed ridiculous to mention that, since I was a kid and had no choice. Plus, it wasn't like they supported me forever. They shoved me out as soon as they thought I could fend for myself. For the next 18 years, they ignored my existence. I was still amazed they had the nerve to expect help now, as if I owed them after everything. The argument turned nasty and personal, and I eventually threatened police if they didn't exit my property. Before leaving after more fighting, my mother highlighted all her early sacrifices for me, supposedly to be a good parent. She said I'd been ungrateful when she once asked me to understand her situation and let her prioritize others over me. Now she portrayed me as the bad guy instead. This has weighed on me since, and I'm struggling to decide if I'm at fault, if I've demanded too much from my mother, or if she's just misleading me. Though I'm pretty sure I'm right, I posted on Reddit for neutral opinions. AITA for refusing to fund my half-sibling's college just because my estranged mother and stepdad are in financial trouble. Edit, though my uncle meant well, I told him what he did was inappropriate and not okay. His actions clearly caused harm. Without him sharing my details with my mother and giving my contact without permission, I wouldn't face this mess. He apologized profusely, saying he didn't know about their money issues and hadn't expected my mother's reaction. He admitted he shouldn't have meddled in my life, and that if we wanted reconciliation, we'd have done it without interference. Since his intentions were pure, I won't cut him off. I'd be far angrier if he'd meant ill. He just slipped up. Plus, thanks to him, I could attend college initially. He was the only one willing to risk co-signing my loan. If you think about it, without him, I might not be here at all. I made clear his action wasn't right, as I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I'm no pushover either. What I did was balanced enough, and I think I handled it well. We're fine now, and I won't resent him since I needed this closure somehow. I also talked to my grandparents about my mom's recent issues. They agree I'm right and will try to convince her to back off. I get why they've stayed connected to my mom. They didn't want to lose access to their other grandkids. They see the hardships in my mom's family but don't think it's fair to drag me into it. That's their stance, and I find it fair. First update. Since our last talk about 9 days ago, my mother has started reminding me of everything she did for me as a child. She sends emails every couple of days trying to make me feel indebted. I don't get it, as raising me alone wasn't a favor. She was obligated legally, and she only did it when it suited her. As soon as I became inconvenient, she and her husband pushed me out to save for the twins and their future. Now that the future is here and the twins are grown, I think they should handle it themselves instead of wasting effort guilting and manipulating me. I'd been ignoring her messages, but I chose to respond a few days back. I laid out everything I'd detailed in my post. As expected, she reacted badly and called me ungrateful again. I just said name-calling wouldn't change facts and that I wanted no more contact since she'd been a poor mother. After that, I blocked her email, but she created another to keep bothering me. I blocked that too, and I'll continue until she gets I'm not here to dwell on her. Honestly, I'm relieved we're addressing this, as I think it'll wrap up soon and give me closure. I only let them in that day because I clung to hope they'd changed, maybe to congratulate and reconcile. But talking showed they're incapable of remorse, guilt, or shame. It reminded me how selfish and manipulative they are, so I've completely let go of reconciliation. Second update. I think my mother's showing up at my job today was the strangest thing she's done. Luckily, I wasn't at work, so she left quickly without succeeding. I felt unwell and took the day off. I'm so glad I did. If I'd been there, she'd have caused a scene to embarrass me. The receptionist called to say my mom was there, insisting on seeing me and refusing to leave despite hearing I was absent. When they connected her to me on the phone, I sternly said I was home, though I was already worried about her actions. I warned that if she tried anything at my workplace, I'd sue her until she'd be too humiliated to send her kids to college. I aimed to sound intimidating, so I think it scared her. It must have, as she agreed to leave if I met her face to face. I reminded her she couldn't handle a lawsuit now and said she wasn't in a position to demand. I added my company wouldn't hesitate to sue if things escalated and they'd be less lenient than me. She'd be wise to leave quietly. No more calls or updates came about it, so I assume she went after handing back the phone. That was a close one, and I can't risk repeats. I've decided to consult a lawyer on protective steps. Since no direct threats, I'm unsure about a restraining order, but I'll discuss options. Until then, I hope the incident was bad enough to make her stop. Third update. Last week, I got my mother to leave my job, but after this week's events, I think a restraining order is essential for all. A few days ago, when I returned from work, she was waiting at my door. I immediately said I didn't want conflict and would call police if she didn't go. As I prepared to dial, she charged at me, knocking me down and sending my phone flying. She swore at me, blaming me for her life's failures, and tried hitting me. Shocked by her wild behavior, it took a moment to respond. But being younger and regularly exercising, I easily overpowered her once I did. Thankfully, the noise drew neighbors who called police. They even helped hold her until officers arrived. When police came, I chose to press charges. She's in serious trouble now. I've also spoken to my lawyer about a restraining order. I hear Harry took the kids to his parents. I'm unsure if he'll return soon. Apparently, after bailing her, he confronted her behavior and said she couldn't keep this up. She fought with him too, suggesting she's truly unhinged. I think she resents my success, but honestly, her problems are her fault. I won't pity her. The restraining order will be active soon, and with my higher income, I've begun considering a bigger house. Now feels perfect to explore options. It's embarrassing being tied to someone like that, so I hope my mother gets help and acts normally. She's also been rude to my grandparents, who say they want distance from her. She alone caused everyone to avoid her. Anyway, I'm done worrying. Thank you for reading. If you haven't subscribed, please do and enable notifications for more surprising true stories from life.